Go somewhere else. I can't take this nonsense anymore. How are you going to blame the defense?
I got the power. Screw Green Bean. Damn it.
But once you get to the sausage, I feel like we're doing something.
Go Jets.
And that's the other part of it, is the people are insanely jealous of this show. This show gets the best of the best, and it does a different way, with positivity.
He scores!
Ow, my head! No, come on.
What would you give up to see a Jets Super Bowl?
All of my friends and family.
Hit those milk thumbs, boys and girls.
Freeze run.
Hold on to your underwear, ladies, and stand by, bitches. It's now time for Talkin' Jets with your hosts, Matt, Ryan, and Green Bean.
What's up, boys and girls? Welcome to Talkin' Jets. My name's Ryan, and I'll be your pilot tonight. I am joined alongside my co-pilot, Mr. Matt O'Leary. You may notice we are down one man, Mr. Green Bean. Normally on my other way is not feeling so great. He's a little under the weather, so we're wishing you well, Green Bean. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I miss our third here, Green Bean. I hope that he feels better, but I'm doing good. I am trying to keep track of all these names on the Jets, both head coaching and GM list. We did a little count before coming on the air here. I believe it's 31 names in total, which is just an absolutely absurd number. So I'm sure we'll bat all those names around and get into it with the chat and have a good time here on this stream.
Boys and girls, make sure you hit that like button if you're coming in here. Does a great deal of service for the channel, helps people know that are just discovering the show that this is a show worth hanging out and talking some football with. We're going to be talking to your comments in the chat as well as all the names that are coming up. I'll be honest, I kind of gave up on trying to keep track of all the names.
Hard.
Dude, I saw two more names pop out like today or yesterday, and I was like, nope, bandwidth's done. That's it. No other names are coming.
No, I'm not doing any more research on candidates here. We're just going to go off of my original feel and hire one of the first 25 people you talk to. I think that's a reasonable request from you, Ryan, actually. I don't blame you.
I think so. I mean, if I was like doing those interviews, I'd be exhausted and names and faces would start blending together and I wouldn't remember who's who. I guess that's why I'm probably not in charge. But
Yeah.
we had a theory. We had a theory.
Berganti or Greenberg who came in with that idea? Imagine that, like kicking that around in the boardroom. Oh, was that the third guy we talked to today or the seventh?
Yeah, what was his plan for quarterback? And Garrett Wilson? Oh, I think it was the other guy.
Yeah.
Oh, no. This is a very Woody Johnson-esque thing. We got to see some playoff games yesterday. We could talk a little bit about that. How does the Vikings game change your opinion on like Sam Darnold and Flores and possibly McCown and like how everything shakes out of that particular coaching tree, the playoffs in general? What were our thoughts and all that good stuff? So we're excited to hop into it.
I was hoping to see Green Bean tonight as just the biggest hater ever. He hates everyone, and he had I'll say viral in our world, viral clip going back, making fun of the people who are like rooting for Sam Darnold, or I'll always be a Robert Saleh fan. So for him to come on and victory lap tonight would have been a lot of fun. But yeah, not a great outing for Sam Darnold at all. That's back-to-back weeks where he looked really bad. To answer your first point that you were tossing out there on if it changes my opinion on Minnesota's like coaches, I don't think so. Like I don't like, I know what Flores is. I think I know what Josh McCown is also. The last two games doesn't really change that for me. If, God forbid, Washington, not Washington, I guess Washington, but Washington puts up a bunch of points on Detroit or whatever, I'm not going to let that one game sway me. So I don't think we should put too much stock into it from the coaching perspective, if that's what you're tossing out there.
Yeah, it's sort of, I'd be lying if I said it didn't impact me a little bit, because the last 2 weeks of Minnesota football, like, forget Sam, but like Flores and his defense just felt like they did not come ready and prepared to play in like the biggest games of the season. 1, to win the division, and 2, to just win in the playoffs. And that at least gives me some pause, especially like I did like more deep dive stuff onto like Flores as well. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies at times with how he's like blown through coaches. He had 5 OCs in 3 years, 4 offensive line coaches in that same time. Tua actively encouraged his teammates to vote against him for team captain so he didn't have to spend more time with Brian Flores. And you compound that with the Ryan Fitzpatrick comments, I'm just like, oh man, this like, I feel like we're just asking for it if we do that. And that's like a total pivot on like where I was like a week ago.
Yeah, you have gone. I think you put yourself in a pretzel in the last 7 days, because the last time we spoke on this show, I think Flores was one of, maybe not your top, but one of the names that you were comfortable with. He's definitely one of my names too. I like Aaron Glenn a lot. I think my prediction is that it is going to end up being Aaron Glenn, but my mind hasn't changed on Flores from this past week. But there's legit concern with each one of those candidates, and I think you bring up a legitimate concern with Flores. I'm not, saying he is the most perfect candidate. It's guaranteed to work no matter what. I think, bringing that up is definitely valid and fair criticisms of Flores. For me, what I like is that he has the head coaching experience already. I thought the teams that he had in Miami overachieved each year. Like, they were supposed to be the worst team in football that first year, and they won 5 games, and a 9-win season and a 10-win season. Then he's let go. And I also kind of like that. I don't think he's going to let, the team push him around. Like, I think he's going to be no nonsense guy, similar to Vrabel. Now, Vrabel has a lot more cachet than Brian Flores does, but I think the Jets need that kind of mindset. And by the way, I think Glenn has it too, just based off some of his comments. I've been watching a lot of interviews with him and some clips from Hard Knocks and, a whole lot of things. And I think that's the kind of philosophy that they need from their head coach.
Yeah, I think a strong-willed person that can kind of put Woody in his place. And I feel like Glenn should probably be able to do that. Flores, I feel like, is sort of the, dad's home from work. Like this is like the sort of
wait till your father gets home.
Yeah, it's just like, oh no, this isn't great. And like, how does the locker room react to that after having sort of like the players coach in Saleh? And Flores, that defense in Minnesota really has shined, like overall over the course of the last few years. He gets there, they're 24th in the league. First year through, 11th in the league. Second year, they're number 2 in the league. So there's definitely, a high standard that he holds his players to. Even Fitzpatrick said that he got the most out of his players, and that's something I feel like the Jets coaches haven't had in a long time. So that is the really big benefit to Brian Flores, and his penalties too. The penalty issue is a big issue for me. The Jets were first in penalties each of the last 2 years. We were top 5 in 3 of the last 5 years in penalties. So really not great. With Flores in Miami, they were 29th, 30th, and 14th, which means at worst he's league average, which like feels kind of nice.
That's a major improvement from where they are, right?
A huge improvement. And like that I can kind of wrap my head around. With Glenn, I feel like he knows how to talk to people. Honestly, the most alarming thing for me with Flores is the 5 OCs in 3 years. And I don't know if like McCown and that pairing would smooth over that because he doesn't have to find an OC. He just comes over with one that he would want. But him not like playing nice in the sandbox with other coaches is something that's probably the biggest of red flags for me.
I think that's fair. And like I said, like there's legit criticisms on each one of those guys. And if that's something that, makes you not want to hire him, that's totally valid. I think we're going to find warts on each one of these guys that we go through. And I think as we go further down the list, I think it gets progressively worse. Mm-hmm. So I would still rank him rather high on my list of candidates.
I agree. I think you and I each had the same exact list last week where it was Vrabel at the top. He's no longer an option. Then it went Flores, Glenn, Joe Brady, I think, right? Yeah. That's the trio I would say is still my top 3. Even with, the rumors floated of Mike Tomlin and Mike McCarthy being a free agent next, tomorrow, I still like those 3. And like the Joe Brady one's like a fascinating one for me. I feel like you'd have to pair him with a veteran head coach. And with Glenn, the knock would be like, okay, first time defensive coach, like that sort of irks me. And that's like the only thing that irks me, I'll be honest. Like if he could be the CEO and he can bring in guys that have like veteran experience, whether it's John Morton as OC or Tanner Engstrad, the passing game coordinator, and then maybe he brings in a DC that he likes, so he doesn't have to call plays. I feel like I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, with him. Too.
I'm going to piggyback off of this point. I want to give Peter from Hudson Valley a shout out because he called into Just Jets with this question. So my answer is going to come out tomorrow, but I saw him in here before, so hopefully he's still in here. But I came up with the perfect name because his question was essentially, let's assume Aaron Glenn comes in here and maybe it's like a Josh McCown or a first-time play caller as the offensive coordinator, that he would like some veteran on that staff. And maybe who would be a veteran defensive coordinator that you'd come up with. I think I found the name.
Let me like run through. So the one that I had one in my mock offseason that I don't think is realistic for reasons I talked with Tigo about last night, and it's Dennis Allen. And it's because they overlap in New Orleans, but it's kind of weird to have your like coach that worked under you and then you to be under him. So that
was one of my thoughts. It's not him, but that was one of my thoughts. You're on the right track here.
So then we're looking defense. It's got to be from the Saints staff then, I would think, right?
He wasn't a part of the Saints, but my hint is that he coached he coached Aaron Glenn for 2 years in his career.
Ooh. With the Jets or with someone else?
Not with the Jets. In one of his other stops.
He was on like 4 teams. All right, let me hold on. Now I want to figure this out.
I wonder if you'll get it first or if the chat.
I think the chat's going to beat me to it.
He's in the chat. So I'm glad Peter's here for this because this is I answer it on the pod, but Peter's he's a loyal listener, so I'm glad that he's going to get it here too.
Would it be Jaguars? 07? No.
Mm-mm.
So before then, we're talking Cowboys or Texans, probably.
One
or
of those
Saints
two.
As a coach.
Not Saints as a coach.
Okay. Interesting. Or are we going back to like college?
You're on the right track with the Texas teams.
So it's Dallas or Houston. Who would have been a defensive coach then? I have no idea.
Mike Zimmer.
Ooh, interesting.
He was the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys in 2005 and 2006 when Aaron Glenn was there. Obviously, longtime Minnesota Vikings head coach, so has experience. He was the defensive coordinator for Dallas this year. And obviously, we know Mike McCarthy just got fired, so I'm assuming that he's going to be available now. I know that Dallas's defense wasn't great this year. They also had a ton of injuries this year. But someone who has had success in multiple stops as a defensive coordinator and had a successful run for a long time as a head coach. And that would be my veteran pairing on that staff. So you have, yes, it's coming from the same side of the ball as Aaron Glenn, which is maybe a knock, but him being
sure it is.
Yeah, but him being the defensive coordinator, I think would be an interesting pairing. And the connection is that he was the DC for the 2 years that Aaron Glenn was in Dallas in the 2000s.
I like that. That is super interesting. I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of that. You pair Aaron Glenn with a guy who's been here before, or not here, but been in the league, enough experience. He can put together a coaching staff along with Aaron Glenn. And then I don't know if it's possible to overlap Glenn and McCown. Like McCown's the guy I've kind of landed on as like, I really want to give this dude a swing at OC. And his resume is just so interesting from a quarterback room perspective. 12 different teams he played on, 14 different offensive coordinators, coached under Frank Reich, coached under Kevin O'Connell, hasn't called plays anywhere he's been, which is like the biggest concern here. But like, can you find a more veteran presence in a quarterback room? Like there's a reason why all these teams brought him in throughout the course of his career. Jake Plummer, Kurt Warner, Matt Leinart, Dante Culpepper, Jamarcus Russell, Jake Delhomme, Jay Cutler, Mike Glennon, Johnny Manziel, RG3 on the Browns, Deshaun Watson, and Sam Darnold. Like that is a list of young quarterbacks for the most part, aside from like the very beginning part of his career, that were that they brought him in. The Jets were obviously one of them too. We paid him a premium to be a coach on the sideline, also on the field for Sam Darnold. And I feel like that gets around the league. Like there's clearly like a path for other teams to like recognize him. And like he would get full credit for the offense if he's OC here under Aaron Glenn. Because it's not like a situation where you have Kevin O'Connell as the head coach and you have offensive staff underneath him that are kind of log jamming the ability to take credit. Like we saw with Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, coaching under Andy Reid, got no credit for the way that offense ran. And I think that's sort of where you can break out McCown to really have success. Do you think he's exclusively coming with Flores, or would he branch off and go a different direction?
I don't think it's necessarily like it's a Flores or bust. I think, he's looking for that next step up the rung. He's a quarterback coach right now. He did a good job, albeit, the last 2 games for Sam weren't very good, but he still threw for 100 yards and 35 touchdowns this year. And, it was a big reclamation project and it worked out for a big part of the season. So I do think he would be open to taking an OC job with someone else.
I see Ryan in the chat. Ryan says, Aaron Glenn plus McCown, what positions do you want in free agency versus the draft? So I think this is beneficial for us. I actually didn't watch your mock offseason, Matt. So tell me who you had as far as your coaching. Like, did you have either one of these guys on your offseason?
I had Flores and McCown, and the defensive coordinator was the DC that Flores had in Miami. His name is escaping me right now.
Okay. So we're probably on like a similar wavelength as far as free agents that are coming from those teams. I did look up, I kind of cheated a little bit and I did almost 2 branches of my coaching staff. I was like, I don't know if I want Flores or Aaron Glenn. So I'm going to like go down like a free agent from each one. I'll give you my 3 free agents that I would want for this particular pairing. So one from the Lions that is going to be a free agent is interior defensive lineman. Where is he? Hold on. I'll find the name. Where'd he go? Oh, no. Where am I looking right now? Free agency, Detroit.
I'm curious to see who from Detroit. I don't think I did not have any external free agents from Detroit. I did have a couple Vikings though. I had 2 Vikings.
Levi Onwuzurike.
Okay.
Interior defensive lineman, played 58% of the snaps. 27 years old.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a position of need, and if Aaron Glenn's coming in, like he's going to bring in some of his guys. That happens with every single every single staff.
That was sort of my thought process with him. That was the only one coming from that team. I'm sure there's other guys that he'll want to bring in, maybe lower end guys, because we don't have a crazy ton of money to spend. So I'm thinking budget free agency. And what I did was I retained a lot of our own free agents, Sherwood, 𝐒'Cols, Morgan Moses. I think I'm blanking on 1 or 2 guys, but like mainly our core guys, which is sort of like a confusing thing to try and wrap my head around because they may wind up leaving. Because you've mentioned this before in the past, like Salah or Ulbrich go somewhere else. These guys may want to follow them. And this staff has no, new staff would have no allegiance to these guys that they've drafted or kept on the team. Next player would be Jedrick Wills, left tackle for the Browns. He fell out of favor in Cleveland. Had an issue had an issue. His contract voids at the end of this year. So he left tackle for his entire time in the NFL, but he played 3 years starting at right tackle at Alabama. So it gives you that little bit of flexibility at, I think he's 26 or 27 years old, allows you to have Morgan Moses start. If he gets hurt, you have that person behind him. If you want to have them compete, he's young enough to be your heir apparent at the right-hand tackle side of things. And he gives you relief for Olu in the event Olu goes down on the left-hand side. So, I think he's going to be real cheap. I think he'd take a prove-it deal for a season. I think Mekhi Becton got 1 year, $6 million or something along those lines. for the season. I think Wills could take something similar because he would see, oh, this is an area I could stick long term. They took a risk on me. Basically, the knock on him was he got injured at the end of 2023, and then also I think got banged up at the beginning of this year, and had a weird thing where he was like, oh, I'm not quite 100% ready to go. I'm going to make a business decision and say I can't play in this game. And like that pissed off the coaching staff, and they're like, you're on ice. Like, we're not playing you right now. He might have played like a little bit down the stretch as well, but I think he kind of was trying to not go on the field until he felt 100%. And it came off as like, I'm not going to play because I have a contract coming at the end of the year. So, sort of a high upside kind of player with low risk. And then I like the, going the quarterback route and bringing in someone like a Justin Fields. It doesn't have to be Fields. It can be, insert whatever, long shot type quarterback you want. I basically don't really want to invest heavily into a quarterback this year. Maybe if one falls in the second round, I change my tune a bit, but I don't want to trade into the back of the first round. I don't think there's anyone at the top of the draft that I want to draft. So that's sort of where I went with my 3 free agents. So the interior defensive lineman from Detroit, the offensive lineman, left tackle, right tackle from the Browns in Wills, and Justin Fields. Who would your 3 be?
I'll give you 3 free agents. I had more, but I'll pick the 3 that stood out. The 2 from the Vikings and one other one that I just happened to like. So my biggest external free agent was Cameron Bynum, the free safety of the Vikings. Okay,
that's exactly who I had on the Flores side of mine. Like, if you swap out the D tackle and Bynum, that was the either or.
Yeah, I'm thinking he probably gets a 3 or 4 year deal, and maybe between like $10 and $13 million a year, somewhere in that range was my thought. I think he's played a lot better too the last 2 years since Flores has got there. So maybe he kind of just sees like, hey, like I'm starting to blossom here a little bit. Now I can get an opportunity to go over to the Jets with the coach that's helped me out. So he was really my big one. The other Viking is just depth, but he ended up having to come in and play in the game last night because of some injuries. But David Quisenberry, the offensive tackle, the veteran, but he was once a starter with the Tennessee Titans, back in the day. And I kind of just view him as like a okay spot starter or, swing offensive lineman. I'm down to bring Morgan Moses back and draft someone in the mid rounds too. Like that was part of my plan, but Quisenberry was kind of just like my emergency, like 6th offensive lineman kind of guy. So those are my 2 for the Vikings. And then one of my other favorite free agents that I think would be relatively cost efficient and sneaky a position of need for the Jets. I had the Jets signing Derek Barnett, edge rusher. He's on the Texans this past year.
Yeah.
Rotational edge. He only played 38% of snaps this past year. He had 5 sacks in those 38% of snaps. So
wow, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know, 4 to 8 million, somewhere in that range, probably.
Yeah, don't break the bank and still get like potentially high-end production out of more snaps. I'm a fan of that. I like the idea of bringing in some type of edge rusher because I don't feel comfortable with JJ, and I'm not 100% sure we're going to get an edge rusher in this draft. Like if Abdul Carter's there, like maybe there's a chance the Jets are taking him at 7, but I would like to go a different route. So I guess based on our free agent picks that we're going, would you feel comfortable saying your top 2 or 3 draft picks that you would like to see? Like first round, second round, third round, not like all it's the 7th, not all like the 7th pick.
Okay. Yeah. So my first 3 picks for the Jets, I went Mason Graham at 7, interior defensive. I think there's a chance that he goes earlier, but the names that I'm targeting for the Jets are, I'm hoping one of Graham, Carter, or Tet McMillan are there for the Jets. Those would be my 3 targets. Now, I've seen mocks where all of them are off the board, and then you're kind of like, shit, that's when you start to get in a tough spot. But if one of those 3 are still there, and assuming 2 quarterbacks are going to go and Travis Hunter is going to go in front as well, I think there's a chance one of the 3 is there. So in my mock, it was Mason Graham, Gunnar Helm, the tight end from Texas in the 2nd round. I think tight end's a really big need. I brought Tyler Conklin back too, by the way, on a 1-year deal. But I think he would help rebuild this tight end room. And then I went safety, Lathan Ransom out of Ohio State. He's more of a strong safety type. He's 6'1", 210, strong tackler. That was one of my focuses too on draft and free agency. Wanted to note as well with the free agent signing of Bynum, his career missed tackle rate is just 9.1%, which is pretty low, especially for the safety position. So I went interior, defensive line, tight end, and safety with my first 3 picks.
Ooh, interesting. So we have the same 3 players at the top of the draft, and I'm right there with you. Ted McMillan is my top guy because I don't think Rodgers and Devontae come back, and I think that leaves us really thin at the wide receiver position because then Lazard's gone too. So you're talking Garrett and Corley and Gibson as like your top 3, and that doesn't make me feel good. So Ted McMillan would give you the ability to have 3 different types of wide receivers in your offense. Guy catches absolutely everything. Would have no issues if they go Mason Graham or Carter. I think both those guys are studs as well. In the second round, I went Harold Fannin, the tight end from Bowling Green. That guy is absolutely electric at catching the ball. You're not going to get much blocking out of him. But I want pass catchers. I want to just, that's kind of where my head was at with the loss of Devontae and Lazard. And I didn't have Conklin coming back. I figured he'd probably leave if Rodgers was gone, but I would be fine if they wanted to bring him back for another year. And then in the third round, I had the Jets trading up because we're at the back end of the third right now. And I don't know if this guy's going to make it that far. Alfred Collins, the D tackle from Texas, had 27 stops this year along the defensive line. We gave up too much rushing opportunities up the gut. And not to mention Harold Fannin Jr. and Alfred Collins will both be at the Senior Bowl. I'm a big proponent of the Senior Bowl and the guys that play there because you get that little extra look at them with all the coaches in-house. Those would probably be my top 3 right now that I really like. I'll throw in a 4th one too because I really have enjoyed the massive humans in my time of like looking at offensive linemen. Ozzie Trapilo, 6'8", right tackle out of Boston College. No penalties in 2024. Only gave up 2 sacks over the course of the last 2 seasons. 1,400 snaps at right tackle, 646 snaps at left tackle, and even played a little bit of guard in college. Talk to me about a 4th round pick that you could just throw a dart at and maybe have an offensive lineman work. Boston College just produces offensive linemen.
Yeah. I don't know. Some schools just have it, man. It's like Penn State with linebackers, wide receivers, LSU and Ohio State. I like it.
We got a good list going. Boys and girls, let us know yours in the comment section. Swamp Ranger comes in, says Flores or Glenn, doesn't matter who, needs to get an offensive play caller right and have a plan to get and develop a franchise quarterback. So I mentioned his name before, but let me just pull him up again. Tanner Engstrand, the passing game coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He started his career with Jim Harbaugh at San Diego. He went from a graduate assistant to a running backs coach to a quarterbacks coach to an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach to a assistant head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterback coach. And that was for 4 years or 5 seasons, actually, 2013 to 2017. Then when Harbaugh went to Michigan, he became an offensive analyst for Michigan. He was the offensive coordinator and running backs coach for the DC Defenders for the 1 year of that league in 2020, and then became an offensive assistant for the Lions in 2020, then offensive quality control in 2021, then tight ends coach and passing game coordinator in 2022, and then passing game coordinator in 2023 and 2024. If there's one guy that I feel like I would want to take a swing on, it's the guy who's called plays at the collegiate level and even in another league and is learning under Ben Johnson and like quickly rose up ranks in 3 different with 3 different teams under some really impressive coaching. So that would be my like goal would be to get him or McCown are like the 2 that I'm like, this would be great. Either one of them.
Those are probably two of my favorite options for OC as well, assuming it's a defensive coach, if it's Flores or Glenn or somebody else on the defensive side of the ball. And it makes sense too, right? Because Glenn has the connection with Engstrand from Detroit. Flores has the connection from the Vikings. Can we also throw in John Morton with the
Mm-hmm.
connection to Aaron Glenn? Because he was here in 2017, and I thought he did pretty good work considering it was a 38-year-old Josh McCown, Jermaine Kearse, Robbie Anderson, and Bilal Powell leading that offense. And they averaged, in the 12 games that Josh McCown was healthy for, they averaged 22.6 points per game, which the Jets don't do that regardless. Did they do this year? Did they hit that? I don't think they did.
They probably were like close, I would think.
19.9 points
Okay.
per game. They're like 3 points off.
I like John Morton. That is who I had with Aaron Glenn as OC. That was before I kind of poked around into Tanner Engstrand. Overlapped in New Orleans, overlapped in Detroit. I'm trying to see, is there any other overlap that could have been interesting? 2009 to 2010 at USC, that would have been Pete Carroll, right? 07 through 2010, or did he bounce before then?
No, Pete Carroll left. I think it was 2011. He went to or 2010 maybe he went to the Seahawks.
Yeah,
But he was
yeah.
there in 07, 08, 09 with Mark Sanchez.
Mm-hmm. He's been kind of all over the place. Raiders for a bit, and that looks like it was under Gruden, senior offensive assistant, Oakland to Las Vegas. Is that when was Gruden head coach? That was during the Cleveland Farrell draft, which would have been
2019.
19. Yeah, so that had to be him. Interesting. I like it. I'm a big John Morton guy. That was like when they performed with Robbie Anderson, McCown, and Bilal Powell. I was like, wow, we have an offensive coordinator. Like, this guy exceeded expectations this year. And then Bowles fires him because we didn't run enough. Crazy. We scored too fast, I think, was the criticism. Dumb.
Yeah, they were 24th in points that year, which I'm not saying you throw a parade over 24th in points, but again, with the quarterback play that they were getting, and they were more explosive offense. There were a few games where they put up 30 plus points that year.
That was also 2 years removed from that was the year after like Fitz and the bad dead cap hit. You lost Mangold, you lost to Brickshaw Ferguson. It was kind of like the changing of the guard. They had lost Revis and Crow, I'm pretty sure. Maybe that was like the final shell year of those guys. Definitely not great. And as far as getting a franchise quarterback, I feel like, man, McCown's the one I would love to see around a young quarterback and just have his fingerprints all over him. Even if you could get an offensive minded head coach, like let's say you get like a Joe Brady as like the head coach and you insert whatever defensive coordinator you want with him. Like if you can somehow steal McCown as like the OC and like quarterback coach, like just focus on the kid. Whatever quarterback we bring in, let Joe Brady call the offense. You just focus on the kid and you got the title underneath.
I like that.
𝐒𝐫𝐞𝐞 says Dorsey, Joe Brady, McCown, Dennis Allen, yes or no? Yeah, on board with that, 100%. I don't know is Dorsey interviewing right now?
No, John Dorsey has not been interviewed. That's neither him or
Agnew.
Ray Agnew. And those are two guys from the Lions that I thought maybe. I mean, they're talking to 6,000 people. Would have thought they would have been one of the two, but they haven't been.
I'm shocked. Dante says, do we really want someone who hasn't called plays yet? Mike LaFleur 2.0. I just want more experience, to be honest. To be honest, I don't think Mike LaFleur was the problem. Like there were issues with like not being flexible enough to use certain players. Like he was very system rigid, but I thought his offense, I mean, he might be the best offensive coordinator from like a scheming guys open standpoint that I've seen in a long time with the Jets.
Play calling wasn't his problem. I think player development, I think you can make a strong case that he wasn't a good player developer.
Correct.
But I like the play calls that Mike LaFleur had. He, at times was a little too pass happy. That I think is a fair criticism of him, but that 2022, I guess, his last year here was really tough watching the film when you had guys running wide open and the quarterback was deer in headlights most of that year.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see what he could have done potentially with Aaron Rodgers. It seemed like, unless he would have just been like, I know more, and just change out of every play that he tries to call. But do you have any concern over a person who hasn't called plays before? I guess we're specifically talking about McCown here.
I don't have. It's a fair criticism of him, but I'm comfortable with it because how much experience he has, man. He was in the league forever. He was under so many different guys. He played the position, played in how many different offenses. I would be okay with him calling plays.
He should build all his playbooks in Madden and let all the offensive players play from that playbook, and like new age coaching. You learn in your fun time as well as your work time. Andrew says, thoughts on Glenn having ties to Johnny Morton? Good ex-Jets offensive coordinator. Andrew Yale.
Yeah, we're in.
We're on board. We like it. Sodak says, have you seen the scheme fit concerns with Flores? I've heard some concerns with it. I heard, was it Dom C that was talking about it with Michael Carter and Sauce would be fine. Was it Quincy would be fine? And maybe Quinnen. And then there was like concerns, like it was like, you know, JJ might have to stand up and play linebacker.
That's if they're playing a 3-4. But from my understanding now, maybe I'm wrong and need to watch more, dig a little bit deeper into the numbers. But I believe he's technically a 3-4 guy, but I think he plays a lot of 4-3 or has implemented more 4-3 this year than in years gone by. And I think that's what this next defensive coordinator or coach, whatever, I think they're going to need to be a 4-3 defense based on the personnel that they have. So I think he can do it. I'm not worried like, oh, he's going to come in here and want to go full Eric Mangini and be like, no, we're running a 3-4. Sorry, Jonathan Vilma, you're not here anymore.
Kills me when you lose good players over scheme fit. It's like, dude, just bend your scheme to fix, like, to the talent that fits. Especially because, like, so much of defense right now, and even offense, is like a blend of everything. Like, you want to keep the quarterback guessing at all times. So, like, those amoeba fronts and, like, multiple guys standing up or have their hands in the ground, like, it really confuses people, especially, like, younger quarterbacks. I think that's something that I'd like to see some flexibility on. I don't want to see a rigid person either way when it comes to, I guess, either side of the ball. Let's see. Where was I? That was Sodak. Got Peter. Peter says, I wrote a blog about my ideal path for the Jets in 2025. If they build it right with GM, coach, staff, free agency, and draft, realistically, how many wins can we expect? Well, the NFL, you turn things around really quick. I think depending on what level of quarterback play you're getting will dictate a lot of your success in general. Now, I think we both probably have the Jets rolling with like Tyrod, a vet quarterback, and Travis for a season. Is that sort of where you've sort of thought they might lie? So I don't think we're expecting a crazy ton of wins. Based on our schedule, we're playing the AFC North and the NFC South, plus the Jaguars, oh God, what are the other three teams? I don't remember. I don't think we're getting a lot of wins. I had us penciled in for 5-12 next year.
Oh, I'm more optimistic than you. I think they're going to have to hit right. So here's their home opponents next year: Bills, Dolphins, Pats, Browns, Steelers, Falcons, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys. And on the road is Bills, Dolphins, Pats, Ravens, Bengals, Saints, Bucks, Jags. It's a tough schedule. But if you get the hire right and you have a good offensive play caller and your veteran quarterback can give you average quarterback play, let's say, and your defense isn't, an abomination, I think there's a path to them being like an 8 or 9 win team. Now that's on the optimistic side. I get that, but Peter's comment is under the assumption that they get a good GM, coach, staff, and they hit in free agency in the draft. Yeah, it's the NFL. Things can turn around, rather quickly. It's not like you have to. It's not supposed. The league is not built so where you're supposed to be horrible for a decade before you can win. Unfortunately for the Jets, they haven't made the playoffs in 14 years, and this is a clear outlier, as every other team is nowhere close to that streak. So I don't think they won 5 games this year. It was really bad, but I think coaching alone and some tweaks to this roster could at least add another 3 wins to what they did this year.
I don't disagree. I think that our schedule was probably it feels easier this year than what I think we're looking at next year. When I look at our like division itself, I think we lose both to the Bills. I think we split with the Dolphins and Patriots. But then like with the North, we probably I could see us winning the Browns and the Steelers matchups. I think that's possible. Penix with the Falcons, I think could be a win. Baltimore, we're going to lose.
Yep.
Bengals, we're going to lose. Saints, if they have Carr, is probably a bit more of a coin flip. Panthers, probably a coin flip right now. I think the Jets have enough talent to beat them, but if Bryce Young continues to like trend upwards, that might be an uphill battle. Denver, I think, is probably a loss right now. Cowboys would be a loss. Bucks would be a loss. And even Jaguars is like, I'm not convinced we can beat them with them having a new coach as well. Now, a lot of this is predicated on Rodgers not returning. Like if you have a quarterback similar to like Goff coming over from LA to the Detroit Lions, or like, you know, just a veteran coming in, that changes the formula. If you have good quarterback play, I do think this team elevates up to like, you know, 7, 8, 9 wins potentially.
Yeah, it's so early for that, and I know Peter understands that when he's asking this question too. Like I know, like I don't think anyone's going to hold us to what we're saying in January about the 2025 Jets, but I think there's a path to them being more competitive than what they were this year. And we also don't know what these other teams are going to look like, man. Like the Steelers have questions at quarterback. Injuries happen every year. Teams you think are going to be good are bad, and teams you think are going to be bad are good. I don't know.
I like Connor's comment right here. He says McCown as head coach, staff, Peterson as OC, Patine/Smith for defensive coordinator / head coach experience. I think that's interesting. I think McCown, for me, I would almost feel more comfortable with him being head coach than with him being offensive coordinator. Like I want his hands all over the quarterback, but I'm scared because he hasn't called plays before. So like that's sort of my little bit of concern there.
Which Smith for DC are we talking here? Mike Pettin is I know who that is, obviously.
They must have been. Did they overlap with the Browns? Now I got to find out.
McCown?
Yeah. Would that have been the Manziel years?
Yeah. I would think so. Yes.
Did you see the clip of McCown, or sorry, not McCown, of Johnny Manziel talking about McCown?
Oh, Lovey Smith. Okay.
Lovey Smith. Interesting.
That makes sense.
So they probably overlapped with the Bears at some point, I would guess.
Yeah, they definitely did.
How long was he with the Bears for? 3 seasons. Time. 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, and Lovey
was
for
there. McCown, that's a long time. He's usually a 1 year, 2 year guy.
Lovey was there for 2 of his 3 years.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. I like that. I like that staff. With McCown, I feel like you surround him with those experienced guys. Brian, what's up, dude? This guy owns a restaurant near me. That is absolutely incredible. Barbecue place.
Oh.
Ayula, I think is the name. Hold on. Now I got to look it up. Sorry. I want to pronounce it right. It is pronounced. Do I have to go to the fucking... Give me 1 second. Is he going to put it in the chat? He might put it in the chat. I should probably put New Jersey.
I don't know. I'm no help.
I'll get it. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿𝐿 Bistro. OLLUCO. Slamming pulled pork. And slamming brisket. So head over there. Brian says, hey, fellas, what about linebacker? Mosley looks old, and we need to upgrade opposite Quincy. We haven't had solid linebacker room in a while. So I want to bring back Sherwood. And then I guess I'm open to like continuing to develop Barnes. I don't know who else is behind them right now. Surratt's a free agent, I think, right?
Yeah, that's it. It would only be Barnes.
I think CJ retires more than likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe some. Do you think, like, let's say Rodgers plays another year? Do you think Mosley comes back, or do you think he's done?
He might try. in his post-season interview or exit interview, whatever you want to call it, he was like, "I'm still focused on playing," but he's had a neck and back injury too, and like at that, that is really, really, really hard to come back and play with. So I'm not optimistic with him being able to come back and be a contributor.
So what do you think we do at linebacker? Like, for me, I don't think I'm super concerned about the defensive side of the ball. Like, if we have to lose games next year because of the defensive side, I'm almost like kind of okay with it. I want to build up like the best offensive line and the best weapons possible this year to try and see what we have in Jordan Travis, to see what we have in potentially a free agent quarterback. Okay. And then prep ourselves for the 2026 class, and then load up on defense after that. Because I feel like this sounds stupid and goofy, but if you don't have a great kicker and you don't have a great defense, you're just going to lose a lot of games regardless. You can still have some fun on offense, but you're going to lose a lot of games. I do want us to address interior defensive line, linebacker, and safety in some capacity, but I'm not necessarily like looking to invest heavily in any of those in particular, I guess.
Yeah, for me at linebacker, I think my plan is bring back Sherwood, have obviously Quincy Williams next to him, and then Barnes as the third guy, and then maybe you're going to, the Jets have a lot of mid to late round picks. I think you add another in the I don't know, somewhere between rounds 3 and 6. Maybe you're looking for a linebacker for depth.
I think that's probably right. I think we have 2 6, 2 5s. Do we have 2 4ths also? We might have 2 4ths. I know we don't have a 7th this year.
No 7th. It's gonna be the 2024 picks. I don't want that. I want 2025.
Tankathon.
They have the 7th pick. This is what this article's telling me. I should just go to Tankathon. That's the easier way to do it.
I'm gonna beat you to it now.
Probably are.
Tankathon, big board. No, not big board. 4.
Okay. 7, 40. They have a first, a second, 1/3, a 4th, 2 5ths, and 2 6ths. So you're right with the 6th.
That makes sense. And then I don't think we're going to get any comp picks because Huff did not perform well. And we signed. Who did we get for free agents this past year? What was our
Tyron Smith, Mike Williams.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to offset it probably.
𝐒𝐮𝐞𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐾.
Ugh.
Yeah, none of those worked, unfortunately. Sorry, Joe.
Dante comes in with a super chat, says, I agree Mike LaFleur has been our best offensive coordinator in the past 5 years. Related question, why is the offensive coordinator job to develop quarterbacks? Isn't that the quarterback coach? Genuine question. Yeah, I think it's more of like it takes a village sort of mentality where you need the nurturing type of environment of like a stable organization, I think is important. The quarterback coach who just spends all the time with him possible. We sort of tried to do that with Josh McCown as the backup quarterback for Sam Darnold because they would just spend all their time together. Like that's where the whole Uncle Josh thing comes in. As far as offensive coordinator, you're trying to set your players up in the best position to have success because you are the individual calling the plays for the players you have. The quarterback coach is just supposed to be that like guy that feeds off the offensive coordinator while also like teaching maybe some of the nuances of the game and maybe some pro things that like I think McCown as a quarterback coach is a great role for him. Sure. But in order to get him, you have to give him some type of promotion, whether that be offensive coordinator or head coach.
The job for a quarterback coach is to develop the quarterback. That's 100% true. I think going back to the Mike LaFleur era, their quarterback coach was Rob Calabrese, who 3 years prior to being handed the keys to the 2nd overall pick and Zach Wilson was calling plays at Wagner on Staten Island. So maybe don't go that route for your quarterback coach would be my recommendation.
I would say that's pretty good. 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴 comes in with super chat, says, I think it's important to grab the GM first. I think the GM is coming soon. We are only a month and a half away from the combine. And we are less than a month from the Senior Bowl. we're like a week and a half. The end last week of January, I think.
Quick, man.
Yeah, it's coming up real quick. And you would like them to have a look, especially at the quarterbacks, because you have Cam Ward that's going to be down there. Jalen Milroe is going to be down there. Jackson Dart's going to be down there. Like, there are some really talented players, along with, some of our favorites in Fannin and Alfred, and actually Tripolo, or Tripola, whatever his name is, the right tackle from Boston College. He's going to be at the Senior Bowl too. So, like, all of these guys, I want to keep a real close eye on. But yeah, I agree. I think GM is probably coming next. Or coming first before the head coach. I don't think there's any coach left at this point that would be able to pick their GM. Like, the most veteran guys that like we can theorize about would be like the what if situation if Mike Tomlin were to become available, and Mike McCarthy, who becomes a free agent tomorrow. What are your thoughts, I guess, on those two? Because we haven't really touched on either one of them.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that, because the Jets aren't and have not expressed any interest in Mike McCarthy. So my hope is that the two teams that have are the Bears and the Saints. So if he goes to the Saints, then I think that opens the path for Aaron Glenn to the Jets. Because I look at the Saints as the biggest competitor to land Aaron Glenn. So that's how I'm choosing to look at it, as an optimistic view for the Jets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't want them to look at McCarthy, which is like kind of crazy. Passing offenses he's had the last few years, solid. 3 top 10 finishes. This year they were the 11th passing offense, 14th in 2022. So he's always been top 14 in his 5 years with the Cowboys. One of my biggest issues with the Jets has been penalties. I brought that up earlier in the show. Jets were first in penalties, like going back from this year down through 2020. So like the 5 years that McCarthy would have been with the Cowboys. Jets were first, 18th, and 7th. So we've been top 10 in 3 of the last 5 years. And then the Cowboys were even worse.
Yep.
4 of 5 years, they were top 10 in penalties. And the other year that wasn't top 10, they were 11th. It's top 11 penalties every single year. And he didn't develop Aaron Rodgers. He didn't develop Dak Prescott. Like, to me, McCarthy is just like a solid name. If you run it back with Rodgers, it's like, sure, that sounds like kind of nice, little nostalgic, but that sort of ends there. Like, I don't really, I mean, I guess if you want like a veteran quarterback and just keep going that route instead of trying to develop one, but Trey Lance hasn't really looked better under his tutelage.
I think it would be horrible. Like, we thought dealing with the media coverage this year for the Jets was bad. What do you think it would be if Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are running out there in 2025 for the New York Jets? Like, that just seems like an insufferable timeline.
Oh yeah. Now, do you think is there a coach that you think would handle the New York media better than any other particular coach we could hire? Like, does that come into your calculus at all? Like, I don't want like an Adam Gase, like looking around the room, like a frog chameleon looking thing like that. Day one, just like, son of a batch. This is our coach.
Yeah, that was not good. Oh, he's just an intense guy. That's all. Yeah. Okay. I think Glenn might be the best for it because he was here and he was able to see it firsthand. And none of these other guys really were. You could say Rex, right? Because he was here and did it once already, but they've already said that Rex is out of the running. So sorry for the Jet fans who was looking to bring back Rex Ryan. It doesn't look like that's going to happen here. Everyone else, like, you kind of have no idea until they're here. I think Glenn's the only one who you could say, well, at least he was here as a player, so he should have some idea what it's going to be like.
Yeah, he has like an understanding. I do think it's probably a little different in the social media age of like New York media. I feel like that's just ballooned, but that's like league wide too. So he's dealing with it, with personalities on the, on the lines as well. Some of his F-bombs that he's dropped in meetings just get me feeling like, this is like defense just fits in New York. Like, it's just, that's sort of like our moniker.
Yeah.
Now, we talked briefly about Sam Darnold. I feel like he cost himself tens of millions of dollars last 2 weeks, really.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Do you think he goes back to the Vikings? I don't think he's going back now. I think they're going to let him walk, and it's going to be Daniel Jones as like the backup bridge quarterback.
Did you see the quote that Kevin O'Connell had after the game? I sent it to my sister because we were talking this morning. She was asking me, she's like, "Oh, what do you think happens with Darnold? Like, do you think he's going back? Do they franchise tag him? What do you do?" And we batted around for a little bit, and then after the game, Kevin O'Connell said, here's the headline from Pro Football Talk. Kevin O'Connell appreciates Sam Darnold, but says, quote, it did not work out in the end. It doesn't sound like like a coach who's like, yeah, we gotta get Sam Darnold back in here. You know what? I think we are going to see Sam Darnold go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are going to go 10-7. They'll be a wild card team. They'll lose by 20 in Buffalo. And then we'll have the conversation of should the Jets trade for Mike Tomlin for the 5th year in a row. That sounds like the most common path here.
That just feels too common sensey. My thought process for a long time was that Darnold would end up like replacing Stafford in LA, but it doesn't seem like Stafford's retiring. Like if he retired this year, I think that's probably the direction he'd go. I hadn't really thought of Sam in Pittsburgh. I feel like that's a very, very soft landing spot for Sam to go. Because I'm not sure Russell Wilson or Fields is back in Pittsburgh.
I don't think so. I think Fields is going to look for a new opportunity. I think with how the season ended with Russell, I don't think they bring him back. I think he's probably going somewhere else as like a stopgap or bridge or, compete for a starting spot kind of deal. I love that you brought up Matthew Stafford, by the way, just because he's up there as like my favorite non-Jet. Just watching him play the quarterback position, he is so fun to watch with some of the throws that he makes, man. And he still got it at, was he 36, 37 years old now? He could still sling that rock, man. So I hope he plays another 5 years.
I really like Stafford. The player that I really enjoyed that played with him for a little bit was Baker Mayfield. And I wanted Baker in the worst way the year we were drafting Sam.
I wanted.
Thought that's who we were getting. Dude, I mean, you go back 3 years now, or 2.5 years. Instead of getting Aaron Rodgers, the move would have been to get Baker Mayfield. Dude, he's scored more touchdowns than anyone else the last 2 years. Wrap your head around that.
That's nuts to think about. Have I ever shown you my Baker Mania shirt and headband that I had made for when I was doing radio back for that draft?
No. Do you have a picture of it?
Yeah. I'm scrolling on my phone right now. So I gotta see if I gotta scroll back like 7 years. I found it. Okay. So I had a custom Baker Mania number 6 shirt made in, the jet screen with the white writing. And I had the Nike white headband on for the day, like the day of the draft. Me and a couple other guys who did sports talk on the station did a mock draft together. And I picked Baker to the Jets. And when I made the pick, I was wearing like a button down. I took off the button down and I had this headband and this Baker Mania cut off t-shirt, like the 𝐒𝐿𝐾𝐞 font.
That's incredible. That's amazing. Wow, that's not even that long ago, and you look very young.
I was, I don't know, 23 at the time. I'm 29 now. Like that's,
I feel like had to be a year before you and I started doing content together. Because I think we started the Becton draft, which I think was the following year.
Becton was a 2020 draft. I think we started during the 2019 season doing stuff, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right. Who would have been? Did we pick? We weren't together for Quinnen, right? Our first draft party, I think, was Becton.
I did a live stream that year as well with those guys for that draft, the same crew that I did that radio show with. So that's real Matt O'Leary OG YouTube days. You could probably see my I don't know if the video is still live or not, but my reaction to the Quinnen Williams pick was, he's got braces. was what I said when he popped. I really wanted Josh Allen. So like a part of me was a little bit not upset. Like I knew that Quinnen Williams is a great player, and I'm very happy that Quinnen Williams is a Jet. But I was hoping for Josh Allen. So when it was Quinnen Williams, and they flashed to his picture smiling, I was like, he's got braces. He's
fresh out of like middle school. What the heck?
Yeah.
That's really funny. I was hoping we'd get Bosa. That was really like the player that I was like, oh, maybe they'll go Quinnen at 2, and Nick Bosa will fall to us. And then Josh Allen being a local kid, Morristown, right? Is that where he was from?
I'm pretty sure you're right with that.
I think that's correct. That was sort of like during that stretch of years of like Quinnen being the final sort of nail in that defensive tackle consistency coffin, where it was like Muhammad Wilkerson, Quentin Cobles, Sheldon Richardson, Quinnen Williams. Like it was like, all right, we're just gonna keep rotating defensive tackles in. Leonard too. I forgot about Leonard.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was another reason why I didn't want the Jets to do it, is because they did it a million times at that position. But Quinnen's a very good player. We don't have to rehash talking points from 6 years ago. But I just thought it was funny to pull up the Baker Mania shirt as we were talking Baker Mayfield 2018.
Where do you think the Jets go? Like if we were to bring in a veteran quarterback that's not Justin Fields or Jameis Winston, like those were kind of two names that have been brought up like ad nauseum. We've mentioned, I guess, Russell Wilson. Trey Lance is going to be out there. God, who else?
Yeah, the Mariota, Taylor Heineke, like that's the crop you start getting to pick in. I had James for my mock-off season, and I know the popular one is Justin Fields, and we talked about this on the Jets roundtable on Friday about Justin Fields. I think might get a bigger contract than we are able to afford. And the reason why I think that is I look at what Sam Darnold got from the Vikings this year was 1 year and $10 million. And he was a backup for San Francisco the year prior, and then was benched in Carolina the 2 years prior. So I think with Fields being at least, starting 6 games and playing well to an extent this year, I think he's going to get like 15-ish million dollars a year. And I don't know if the Jets are going to be able to afford that kind of price tag.
Do you know how much Sam Darnold got the year before in San Francisco?
No.
4.5.
4.5.
So like I think Justin Fields is not going to get a lot.
So then why did he get $10 million after getting 4.5 the year prior?
I think being with Shanahan was a huge plus. Drafting a quarterback. I don't know when they signed Sam, like timeline wise. But he got it was a $6.25 million signing bonus. So he has 4 void years added onto this. So his cap hit for this season was not a lot. I mean, it wound up being $5 million for this year, and then they're going to have a dead cap of $5 million next year. I think it's the Shanahan effect. I think it's, hey, this kid's not bad. We've got Purdy. It's not someone we're going to keep around right now. And O'Connell, is O'Connell from the Rams, or did he? I know like those guys overlap between McVay and Shanahan. So I feel like having Sam back there for a little bit. Also, like it was probably attractive for Sam to be like, hey, I'm competing against a rookie. This is probably my best shot to start. Or even at the time, Kirk Cousins is gone and Sam signs, whenever that happened. But I think Fields could be something similar. Like I don't think Fields has done as much as Sam Darnold on the quarterback front. I think you're gambling on a lot of like potential upside or a lot of like really low floor. Like I feel like Sam's floor is much higher than Justin Fields. And I feel like the ceiling could be comparable.
Okay. All right, maybe I'm, I mean, for the Jets' sake, I hope I'm wrong, because then that's just another quarterback that maybe they could look to bring in.
Yeah. Well, I just think Fields is like, if he's looking for a place to go, a place to like, do you think he probably wants to start, right? Like give himself the best opportunity to play now. The Raiders are interesting, but they have Gardner Minshew under contract, I think, for another year. Pretty sure. Or is he done? I gotta look.
I don't know, but I would assume the new regime is going to want their own guy.
So he's got. Well, it depends if they want to trade up or if they like someone where they're sticking at number 6, or maybe top of the second round. basically Minshew's going to be there for next year. He's got a $14 million cap hit, and I guess they could move off. Like, cap savings wise, they'd save $6 million if they did want to cut him. But like, he's probably the perfect bridge quarterback as opposed to bringing like someone else in. Where else would Sam end up other than like Pittsburgh or Fields even? Like, where else could you see him potentially like landing?
Giants.
Yeah, that's a good spot. I feel
Maybe
like
not
Russ
Sam,
to the
'cause
Giants is where
Russ.
like,
Yeah. I could
there was
see that.
rumors for him going to the Giants for like a decade now. And I feel like this is when it finally happens.
That wouldn't surprise me.
What other teams are out there? Because like, if let's say Russ or Fields goes to the Giants,
Okay, so
I think Winston
Giants,
stays in
Raiders.
Cleveland.
Giants, Raiders, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Maybe Minnesota's looking for some other veteran to pair with McCarthy.
I think it's Daniel Jones. I think they'll just keep him.
I guess, right?
He's already learned like half a year under O'Connell. And I don't think they're necessarily like they're losing a ton of free agents this year. Like, I don't think the Vikings are going to be very good next year, or at least it'd be like kind of a shock.
You know, this year they weren't supposed to be this good this year. You know, either.
That's true.
So it could be a fall back down to earth year for Minnesota.
I mean, you got New England's got their quarterback, Buffalo's got their quarterback, Miami's got theirs. So it's like us, potentially, you know, depending on what happens with Rodgers. Giants, Browns. Billy SBC says Sam back to the 49ers. I feel like Kirk's going to the 49ers.
Yeah, I could see that. I definitely could.
In the Tennessee, maybe? That's an interesting spot.
Tennessee, they're definitely drafting someone first overall. But
Sure.
if they're looking for someone to, like, maybe they want Cam or Shador to sit. And if they're going to go that route, then yeah, maybe they are in play.
Houston's got their quarterback. Jacksonville's got theirs. Colts don't really have a quarterback. Like, I don't really know what happens with Anthony Richardson. I think they're kind of stuck with him for one more season.
I agree. I think they're going to stick it with him.
And then you got the whole North has their quarterbacks outside of, well, actually, no, not the whole North, only half the North. Steelers don't, we name them. Browns don't. I think Winston stays there, though. The West, Gardner Minshew, Herbert, Bo Nix, Mahomes. So then in the NFC West, Stafford, if he comes back, Kyler, Geno could potentially get moved. I could see them, you know, trading Geno.
Maybe Geno's an odd man out. It could be.
I feel like I'd be a little surprised, but that's like a name that I could see floated. I think he's in the last year of his deal too.
He is. Yep.
Who am I missing from that division? I'm missing a team.
Cardinals.
San Francisco,
Kyler?
Purdy.
Oh, okay.
Then the North, you got Caleb Williams, Jordan Love. I think the Vikings are sticking with Daniel Jones. Who am I missing? Lions have Goff. The South is the Saints. So Carr said he's not going to take a pay cut. So I think Carr's probably. If they cut Carr, I would take Carr. I don't think we could pay him, but like, I would love to. Like, I like Carr. He's just a very like likable guy. Or does Carr go somewhere that makes more sense for him? Like, I feel like we might not make sense for him.
Yeah, I don't know, because they kind of almost did that 2 years ago. Like, I don't know if they're gonna be like, oh, you know, now we'll try the Derek Carr thing 2 years after the fact when it didn't work in New Orleans.
Yeah, I take that back. I don't want Carr. Fuck him. Done with it.
But that's interesting. The Saints might be a sneaky team in on a quarterback.
The thing I saw floated out there was like McCarthy goes down there, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae team up down there, and it's a division that could be like one
Wide open.
Yeah. Got to trade for him though. We're not giving him up. Give us a pick.
Okay. Good luck. The contract.
I feel. Do you think there's any situation where the Jets just say like, "Hey, Rodgers wants to play," and we're like, "We're running it back with you"? Like, I feel like Aaron Glenn would be okay with Aaron Rodgers. Like, I feel like it's like a Jared Goff kind of like, you know, facilitator of the offense. I feel like defensive guys kind of like that style of play.
Okay. Now, who's the GM pairing? Because if it's a vet GM, actually, even not. If it's a vet GM or if it's a first-time GM, they only have one crack at this. So do you think that makes them less likely or more likely to want to keep Aaron Rodgers? Essentially saying, do they want to do their own thing or continue on from what the last regime started?
Well, I think you get a punt year. I think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be, if Rodgers is gone, you're probably not going to be held to a very high expectation in 2025. If Rodgers stays, you have the opportunity to have some success if he does recover a little bit more from that Achilles. Better coaching, maybe get you a few more wins. Like if I was a GM, I would think, hey, I'm definitely going to get my opportunity to pick a quarterback if Aaron Rodgers is here. It just doesn't have to be in this draft that seems, less favorable than maybe next year's draft looks.
Okay.
Basically, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, is there a situation where Rodgers is like, I don't want to play for the Jets anymore because I don't like the coach? And like the Jets are like, well, we're cool with paying you the contract you agreed to, so like you're staying here. So like,
no, I think they would just release him then. I don't think they would. I don't think we're gonna get like the Jets are trying to force a disgruntled Aaron Rodgers to come back. I think they would just release him if that was the case.
Citybert says, rank these types of head coaches: culture guy, hot young play caller, defensive guru, retread. I mean, in general, regardless of who is available, all have pros and cons. So let's see. Defensive guru is probably like closer towards the end for me. And I think it's cyclical too. Like I think when you have a culture guy, that was sort of what like Robert Saleh was brought in here to like fix with the Adam Gase stuff, but he was also the defensive guru. Like those two things are sort of married. So now that we've gone that route, I think we're probably going towards either the retread route or I guess a culture guy, because it depends how bad the inside of that locker room is. If the culture is as bad as like Woody Johnson and like the fan base feels like it might be, then culture is going to be put ahead pretty high up there with retread.
Yeah, it's hard to differentiate because I feel like there's a lot of overlap here. Like a retread can be a culture guy or a retread can be an offensive play caller or defensive guru, but I think I would go probably the order he put him in: culture guy, play caller, then defensive guru and retread.
I guess there's probably more retread head coaches that are bad than there are retread head coaches that are good. So that's probably a fair assessment.
And it depends on who, like, because I'm thinking of guys in my head for each one of these things who are both good and bad. So I know you're talking types, but
yeah. Well, because like you kind of have to frame it between like what we have available. So like retread could be anywhere from Vrabel to Flores to Vance Joseph to Rex Ryan. Like that's a pretty wide spectrum. Defensive guru could be Flores, Aaron Glenn. Although I don't know if Aaron Glenn's necessarily billed as like defensive guru. I think he's more of like a leader of men type of view, culture guy.
Right. Which that's the hard differentiation for me. Like, am I putting Glenn and Flores in culture guy or defensive guru guy?
I don't think I put Flores. Okay, so interesting. Flores is a very different type of culture. Like I think it's a disciplinarian culture as opposed to Glenn that might be a little more receptive to hearing feedback and criticism from his players. I don't feel like Flores is going to be as open to that.
Valid.
And then young offensive play or young hot play caller, Joe Brady. I don't really love like Slowick, mainly because the Jets have like took them to church the last like 2 seasons. Granted, they have injuries at wide receiver. Did we interview Slowick? I know he requested an interview. I don't know if we actually like
not yet.
Oh, they're still in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any shot you think like when Tannenbaum says this isn't going to be over for a few weeks? Any shot we're like actually looking at Joe Brady as our next coach?
They could. Maybe they do really like him. They would be able to interview him though. When's the earliest they could interview him? I guess the week, assuming they're going all the way to the Super Bowl, the week off that they have in between.
Yeah, it's either after, it's going to be right after the championship game either way.
Yeah, but that
I
would
think.
be, yeah, I think you're right. But I think we'd get like, hey, the Jets are hiring this guy without it being official. You know what I mean? Like, I think the whole world will kind of know if, the Bills are in the Super Bowl. They'll know if Joe Brady's got a job or not.
Do you think that? So I think we probably agree. We probably hear GM first. Do you think the GM hire is going to tip our hand on who the offense or like who the head coach is going to be?
Depends on who it is.
𝐒𝐮𝐞𝐞, I feel like, is a total like tip of the cards.
Yeah, that feels like it is, but I'm not buying, or maybe it's just me hoping because I don't like 𝐒𝐿∞, but the comments that Rich Cimini made on both ESPN yesterday and then on the podcast with Will Parkinson, he was essentially saying that he doesn't think that Brian Flores is married to Ryan 𝐒𝐿∞, and then said it would be a surprise if the Jets hired 𝐒𝐿∞. That made me feel a little bit less tense about the situation. But yes, if someone like 𝐒𝐿∞ gets hired, there's going to be the natural thought that it's either McCown or Flores. If 𝐒𝐿∞ gets hired, I think a lot of people are going to be nervous that it's going to end up being Matt Nagy. But I don't think it's a guarantee that 𝐒𝐿∞ would hire Matt Nagy. I think that's just a pairing that people like to make.
I feel like I find myself like gravitating, obviously 𝐒𝐿∞, but like gravitating towards Dimitroff and like how he built up the Falcons those two times. And the fact that we interviewed him first has the little bit of insight into Flores. I feel like he could pair nicely with like almost anyone because he's kind of been out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't feel tied to anyone the way 𝐒𝐿∞ and like 𝐒𝐿∞ does. Although Mike Greenberg it wouldn't be attached to anyone either because we don't have, an interview lined up with Cohen. Is there anyone in his like history that you think might link up better? Like if you're bringing in a cap guy or a, contract guy in Greenberg, do you try to pivot towards someone that has a scouting background like an Aaron Glenn to lean on?
That's a good thought. That's a really good thought, actually. That's not something that I considered, but that could be a pairing that works well, right? Because then you're getting someone who's more on the analytical side and the money side, with the coach being more on the scouting side.
And that's also a situation I could see Savage stay on board.
In some role.
Yeah, like an advisor or something. What was that?
How long has Phil Savage been with the Jets? Did he predate Joe Douglas?
No, he came in with Douglas. I think it was, I don't know if it was the same year or the following year, but it was very close.
In 2019. It's hard because I feel like there's guys who are just in this organization forever, and then I forget when people come in and bow out.
Double R says, I'm sorry, guys. I'm really worried we let Rodgers go and he kills it for a contender. Have we forgotten the wasteland of quarterback position we've had to endure since Pennington? Let him bridge. So, like, we move on from Pennington, Favre gets hurt. We move on from Favre goes off. Pennington obviously wins the division title with Miami that year as well, or the year prior. There is that little bit of concern. I very much hope Rodgers retires so I don't have to deal with that. If he comes back, I'm kind of okay if they like run it back with him. I think the story that came out of like the Jets with Jermaine Johnson and Rodgers letting him use his private jet to go to and from like Achilles surgeries or like rehab or whatever, like it definitely feels like the players on the team like him. Other than like Garrett Wilson, like the Garrett Wilson side of things is like the part that gets me a little squirrely about Aaron Rodgers potentially coming back.
The part that I don't know about Rodgers coming back, there's a few things. One, obviously his age and being injured the last 3 years is one thing that worries me. But if Rodgers is to come back, number one, he has to take a pay cut, which he's already done and said that he might be, that's possible for it to happen again. So that's, I think, something that's more likely. I also don't want to see the Rodgers and Devontae Adams show every single game. Like I think having Devontae Adams here, like he's a good player, but I don't like all right, we're just gonna focus in on the one guy and like I'm gonna have my guys and do things, my way and run my offense. I think he would have to be open to letting the new coach, letting the new coordinator come in here and do what they want to do with him being a passenger. And if he's okay with being a passenger, then yes. But is he willing to do that? I think is the question that we need to ask here or bring up. Because, yeah, in theory, in comparison to some of the other quarterbacks that we talked about here, yeah, Aaron Rodgers does look better. But is it going to be Aaron Rodgers with Nathaniel Hackett here? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers with, his guys here and his offense here and, the winding the play clock down to the final second and burning timeouts and, throwing a Devontae Adams 18 times a game where Garrett Wilson has half the targets? Like, I'm just that's the part that scares me off from Rodgers. And again, if there's a world where he is open to coming back and taking a pay cut and letting the new head coach and offensive coordinator do their thing and him be the bridge, then yeah. But if he wants to go like, I want another championship and I want to do it my way, I don't know if this is the right spot for him then.
I think you're probably right. There was did you see Devontae Adams on the Kay Adams show at all? He had some comments about, so he was talking about, they were talking about Jordan Love and the Packers and how they need a wide receiver, potentially a veteran wide receiver. So like, if that's sort of the Devontae headspace right now, I feel like he might know Rodgers is done and he might be like hanging it up. We talked about it on the Jets roundtable where it was, it felt very final at the end of that last game.
That was the feeling that I got from that game the entire time. Devontae kept that touchdown pass, the ball from that. Rodgers kept the ball on 500, obviously, but he kept the last one from Brees too. Like, I don't know. It feels done to me.
Going out with 4 touchdowns is like a pretty sweet way to go out. Like, oh man, I could have kept going. And you sort of tell yourself that, throughout the end of your, next chapter, I guess.
Yeah. Leave him wanting more instead of coming out and not doing that more games like you had up in Buffalo the week prior.
And then if he leaves and we have a shit season next year, which is probably likely without him here at quarterback, we're gonna be like, oh man, remember the good old days? We should have had Aaron Rodgers. And then it sort of like almost helps rebuild his like image.
Yeah, he changes his legacy changes. Then it's like, man, that guy, he wasn't the problem. It wasn't Aaron Rodgers' fault.
Look at his stats. They're 28 touchdowns or whatever he had.
Yeah.
Citybert comes in and says, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Stroud, Herbert, Lamar, top 5 to 6 quarterbacks, all in the AFC. We need realignment. Look, it's cyclical. Things swing back and forth. For the longest time, the NFC was just juggernauts. And then the young guns came in and you got the Allen and the Mahomes, the Burrow. Like these guys are all super young between, Allen, Mahomes came in 2017, Allen and Lamar were 2018, Burrow and Herbert were
2020. Yep. You had it.
And then Stroud, obviously the, more recent of those. I don't know. You just got to find the right guy. I'm open to it being a quarterback in this draft class. Like, I'm not saying I don't want to draft a quarterback. I just don't want to end up in like a Hackenberg situation where it's like, we kind of like this guy, Jordan Travis back there, or we're looking ahead to the next draft. And then you let a Watson or a Mahomes just slip past you. Like, got to do the analysis, I feel like.
I don't think there's a Watson or Mahomes in this draft class.
What do you think about Jackson Dart? Have you watched enough of him yet?
I get the real answer is probably no, but from my brief digging, it would be another mid-round swing, which if the Jets want to take a mid-round throw at it, sure, but I don't think that stops you from taking a quarterback in 26. Taking a first-round quarterback likely does, though.
I think taking a top 2 round. So I think 7th overall absolutely precludes you from taking one. But I think if you're at the top of the 2nd round, I think you probably are in a situation where you may not take a quarterback. Now I'm curious where they have him ranked.
I think between like the 3rd and 5th round is what I've seen for him.
Is
right
that
now.
really where he's sit right now? Dart. Man, he definitely looks like Zach Wilson too. Like in this one picture, headband, fucking 6'2". So they have him draft wire, 49th overall, draft Bible, which I've never heard of, 61, draft tech, 67, Bleacher Report, 75, draft net, 80, mid DB, 84, CBS, 86, ESPN, 92, draft buzz has him at 142, and then PFF has him at 183. So the aggregate has him much closer to 3rd round and above. And some of the other sites have him like way later. I think him at the Senior Bowl and the Combine is going to get people talking. And I think 2nd round is where he ultimately shakes out. Be an interesting situation.
I mean, quarterbacks tend to rise and get overdrafted too. So I mean, that wouldn't shock me.
Matt comes in, says, just jumped in. I prefer Glenn with someone from Detroit as OC. He's a bit higher than Flores for me. So Matt Zisselman, we were talking about Tanner Engstrad, the the passing game coordinator for the Lions, or John Morton, who overlapped with Aaron Glenn both in New Orleans and in Detroit. Currently I think he's the pass game coordinator for the Broncos. Is that right? I think that's where he's at. John Morton, yeah. I know he's with the Broncos right now.
What is his role there?
I think he's I want to say it's pass game.
Yes, it is pass game coordinator. You're right.
So either one of those, I think we'd be pretty happy with, or McCown if you compare McCown. I'm sure there's probably other guys that we don't know. This is it doesn't. Do you think Aaron Glenn sort of feels like Saleh with like, oh, are we getting McDaniel or are we getting Mike LaFleur? Like we don't know which one we're going to get, and in hindsight, McDaniel would have been really nice to steal.
Yeah, probably. Right? Because there's multiple guys that he's connected to. There's not that one obvious guy. And with Saleh, it was those two from San Francisco felt obvious. It was either going to be LaFleur or McDaniel. And Shanahan was like, no, McDaniel's my guy. You could have LaFleur. I thought he was okay. McDaniel obviously better. But yeah, I see the parallel. I do.
Jet Engine says Super Bowl champion head coach with 8 division titles is now available. Nah, let's do it with let's do the Grow, Herm, Mangini, Rex, Bowles, Saleh thing again. I promise it'll work this time. So Jet Engine wants McCarthy. That's his stance. Jet Engine, I'll give you my rough thoughts on McCarthy. I guess the game plan is like, okay, are you running it back with a veteran quarterback in the future? Or do you want to develop someone? Because right now, McCarthy is an unknown commodity in terms of developing a quarterback. Any of the young guys he's worked with, he hasn't really developed. Rodgers and Dak were both Rodgers and Dak prior to and post McCarthy. His passing offense, from a statistical standpoint, really nice the last 5 years. 11th, 3rd, 14th, 2nd, 8th. So you'd probably see success in the passing game. Penalty-wise, he's actually worse than the Jets have been over the last 5 years. All 5 years, he has been top 11 in penalties. 4th, 2nd, 9th, 1st, and 11th the last 5 years. So, like, you're not getting better on that front necessarily. I also don't think the Jets are, like, actively going to interview him. So, like, as much as, like, we want to be like, oh, you should do this, and, like, I can't believe people don't want him, like, part of us wanting or not wanting guys is based on the Jets actually wanting to interview them. So I think there are a lot of Jet fans that would take McCarthy if that was floated out there by the Jets.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Mike McCarthy guy. He does have a Super Bowl win. He is over 500 as a coach in his career. He is, 608 win percentage, which is really nice. I look at his entire career, and it's hard not to feel like he's underachieved with what he's had in both Green Bay and in Dallas. They've won one playoff game in the 5 years he was in Dallas. He's had Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott, who I think Dak gets a lot of hate, but I think he's a pretty good quarterback. And the penalties is a great example. And I think I don't think he's a very good in-game manager. And we were upset with Robert Saleh. Now, granted, I'm not saying that Robert Saleh is in the same stratosphere as Mike McCarthy, but I think we'd see a lot of the same issues of penalties and not being ready to play. Some weeks, I think McCarthy would give you a significantly higher floor than some of these other guys, but he comes with some major flaws. I don't think it's as simple as he won a Super Bowl and is a 600 win percentage guy. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. And I would just warn against some of his shortcomings in both of his stops in both Green Bay and in Dallas.
And Jet Engine, I'd also throw in there too. Matt mentioned the preparedness to play, the penalties and whatnot. Aaron Glenn, at least going into the final week of the season, when they needed to beat the Vikings and win the division to get the 1 seed, man, Aaron Glenn's defense came to play. They beat up Sam. I like that. So even though he's on the defensive side, he gets his unit ready to play. And I'm not so sure. There's some concern, I think, on the Flores side of things for 2 weeks, in a row of like, it's not really like how I'd like to see that defense perform. Some of it might have been a little bit of crashing back down to earth on like, to some degree. But I don't know. I agree with you on like Matt on the McCarthy side of things. I think it's underperforming for a vast majority of his career. Jen Engine comes back, says, listening to Tanny is like asking Captain Smith to pick the next captain of a White Star Line ship, his Giants-Browns trade idea, and Tebow disqualify him. What's the Giants-Browns trade idea?
Oh, it was it was a really bad trade. I believe it was for Dexter Lawrence. Let's see if I can find it. Mike Tannenbaum, Browns, Giants trade. I remember this coming up. Oh, was it the Daniel Jones one, maybe?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I guess it was Daniel Jones for
Myles Garrett.
No. Deshaun Watson.
What the hell?
That's on the first Google. That's the first one that came up. But there's been a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't liked Tanny while he's been on TV, and like I feel like he's more clip culture than anything else at this point.
Yeah, he is. I did get to speak with Mike Tannenbaum, and I did a show with him once actually when I worked at Odds Checker. Really nice guy. But it was cool to talk to him. I asked him about John Connor. Remember John Connor?
Yep, the Terminator, who's not named.
I said, how much begging did Rex have to do to get you to draft John Connor? he chuckled. I think you like that one.
You got Sam Aiken coming in saying Garrett was the 4th most targeted wide receiver. What do you think is the real issue?
Look at the numbers post Davante Adams and get back to me.
Not even just post Davante Adams, but look at when those targets happened. Garrett wasn't targeted in like the most critical of spots for like a lot of games. It's like garbage time or like nonsense kind of plays, and then there's plays where like Garrett's like fucking jumping up and down, waving his hands like, hey, I'm in the middle of the field, like there's literally no one within 20 yards of anywhere from me, and Rodgers is just not throwing them. So I think the frustration is when and how he's utilized, not so much the like amount of times that he's utilized, especially because he's wide open down the field and Rodgers wouldn't push the ball down the field. Like that was the most frustrating part about Rodgers this year, I feel like.
Yep. There was a big change. He had 23 targets in the Minnesota game. So that's the big one, and that's pre-Devontae. So that weighs a lot on the 154 total targets that he had. But in the Miami game, he had 5 targets on the game, and most of that came at the end. And same thing with the Buffalo the week prior. A lot of it was in garbage time, the production, and it's in key moments. It was Rodgers going to Devontae or Allen Lazard were the ones that he was targeting the most.
Yeah, I want Garrett to like want to play here. And I don't know. Garrett's such an interesting question mark. I think even if he requests a trade, I just tell him no, I'm not. Like, sorry. Like you gotta put up with whatever's going on next year, and it is what it is. And then hope that you hit on a quarterback in 2026 if one of the guys you don't have on the roster for 25 isn't the answer. Is there like, do you think Fields would be the guy for like Garrett to be like okay with? Just because it's like he knows him from college, but like I can't imagine him having better stats with Fields.
No, I was gonna say it's so easy to go, oh, well, just get Justin Fields because they played together in college. And you're like, wait a second, Justin Fields throws for 170 yards a game. Like I don't know if he's gonna be crazy happy with that either.
Yeah, it's such an interesting catch-22, I feel like.
But you know who does get him the ball? Tyrod did. And Tyrod's not afraid to take shots down the field either.
That's true. Maybe that's just like the answer for next year. It's like, hey, it's Tyrod and Travis. Like, I am okay with that scenario. I'm also okay, like, if they want to bring in Fields and Fields just can't beat out Tyrod, I'm fine with Tyrod being like the guy too.
Am I crazy to say that I don't know if he would? That I think that there's a better chance that Tyrod would beat out Justin Fields?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think Tyrod, the hope with Fields, if you were to bring him in, would be like, can you get him to click at some point? Like, you know what Tyrod is. Tyrod is like the constant in a math equation. Like, it's not, you know, top 16 level quarterback, but he'll give you like, you know, 23 to 15, somewhere in there, you know, on a consistent basis. Like, I don't think he's always going to be a terrible guy. He's not going to be healthy the entire season. He's going to take, you know, a shot, and, you know, you are going to see Jordan Travis at some point. Like, I just don't want to get into a situation where we're like, oh, we got Bryce Petty or like crazy random like fifth string quarterback that no one's ever heard of playing like, you know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or whatever it was.
A lot of people want to see Jordan Travis.
Oh no, I want to see Jordan Travis. I don't want to see like what happens after Jordan Travis. Because if Tyrod gets hurt and it's Jordan Travis and something like anything happens to Jordan Travis, if he doesn't stay healthy or he stinks, I have no idea. Like what scrubs on the streets.
You need another vet. You probably need another vet making $5 million in that room, whether it's Heineke or Mariota or Winston or whoever, someone like that.
I always liked Mariota. That'd be an interesting grab.
The duck.
Suck on a duck.
Suck for the duck.
Suck for the duck. I can't believe I never heard that when he was actually like coming out.
Yeah, that was the big one. I thought suck for the duck.
It had to be.
15 or 14.
That was so good. I wanted him in the worst way. That was the quarterback that year that I was like, oh, it's our guy. And then we fucking beat Tennessee. And then we're like, son of a bitch. We're getting Leonard Williams. I wanted Amari Cooper, and he goes right in front of us. Stupid. Matt Zisselman comes in, says, I was the one who originally brought up ''𝐒𝐿_Strain as an option a few weeks ago with you guys. Big fan of his. Matt, you're a good man. Good man. So that's why, Matt had mentioned earlier in a super chat, I prefer Glenn with someone from Detroit as offensive coordinator. So that's when we brought up 𝐒𝐿_Strain again. So Matt was the one that imprinted that into our heads.
Yeah, and that's a good connection to make because of everything that he's done in Detroit over the last few years in this new regime. He was, you know, quality control coach, then a tight end coach and passing game coordinator. And then the last 2 years has been a passing game coordinator, and their passing offense is very good. Now, how much of that is Ben Johnson? We have no idea. There's no way to know that. But plucking from that organization, I don't mind doing.
Do you think there's a chance, like, if Glenn were to come over and 𝐒𝐿_Strain came over, that like Hendon Hooker becomes part of like that group that could come this way? Or would he be someone that might follow Ben Johnson or just stay put?
Maybe.
I haven't watched like any Hendon Hooker.
Hasn't played like at all. He's attempted 9 passes in the regular season. I don't know what his production looks like in the preseason. He just turned 27 years old. He was a very old prospect when he came out in the 23 draft. I don't know how much more developing was there for him at that point, but maybe that's someone that they're interested in bringing along.
Well, he had that bad injury in college, didn't he? That like knocked him down. He was going to be like a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and I think he fell to like pretty.
He ended up being a 3rd round pick in 2023.
Oh, really? Okay. Let's see. Let's see if I can.
But he did have a bad injury in college.
Let's see. Hendon Hooker. We're gonna do this by preseason. Do offense. Nope, not offense. How do we do this? It's gotta be passing, I guess. Yeah. All right. So passing this year in the preseason, he had a bad game versus the Giants. He went 5 completions on 9 attempts for 36 yards in his first game. Bad. Then against Kansas City, he went 12 for 15, 150 yards. And
That's
then
good.
right after that, went 12 for 20 with 117 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He had 3 drops this year. Did he play last year? He did not play last year at all. So we've only seen 3 games from him in the preseason.
Very, very, very small sample.
65 quarterback rating in that first game, 108.3 in the second game, 71.7 in the third game. He took 5 sacks in that third preseason game.
Ouch.
It's not ideal. Adjusted completion percentage. Ooh, that's interesting. So 62.5 for that first one versus the Giants, 92.9 for that second game. So that second game versus Kansas City, I mean, I know Kansas City probably wasn't playing any starters, but like that's still pretty solid. And then 73.7 for the third preseason game.
Okay.
That's interesting enough. If you could get him for like not a whole heck of a lot. I just don't know if they spent a 3rd round pick on him, like what are they going to want to, I feel like you don't give him up.
No, he's still under contract for 2 more years anyway. So he's, be a cheap backup for them.
Yeah. Jet Engine says that is an indictment on the Jets organization. The Jets are chaotic at this point and need a full rebuild and a stable hand. Not someone that has no idea what they're doing for the first 2 years. Yeah, look, that's our biggest criticism of like, in particular of Aaron Glenn, because he hasn't been a head coach. Joe Brady, I feel like the gamble on the offensive like young mind, is warranted enough. Like I would be okay with not getting the culture changer guy if you could give me the guy that might like change the franchise with his play calling. Flores scares me. Flores gives me like powder keg vibes.
You've soured in the last 7 days on Brian Flores, but with Joe Brady, I know what people are gonna say with that he has Josh Allen and then he got to work with Joe Burrow and it was those players, and I like his offense, man. Like, there was a really big difference last year with what Josh Allen and that offense looked like, and then they made the change with Brady, and it really opened things up. I like how he calls the game, even when he was in Carolina. I know the offense wasn't really all that successful, but I like his offensive philosophy. So is he my number 1? Oh my God, no brainer target? No. Would I be intrigued by the hire because of the ceiling of what the offense could be? I would.
Yeah, that's sort of where I fall on this. And I won't be upset if we sign Flores. I just think there's a very like explosive potential. Like I feel like he might have an incredibly low floor from like, oh no, everything's going wrong and he just fucking hates the coaching staff and like shit goes sideways. But you could also have like sky high like expectations because of his team's overperforming in Miami and being disciplined. And those are some of the biggest issues that we saw with the Jets in 2024. So like I do think he can fix a lot of those things.
And maybe he's learned from his coaching.
That's the hope. And that's why I like that they're doing the little bit of research. Dimitroff knows him. Grigson knows him. McCown knows him. They're going to interview him. Like you're just surrounding yourself with, people that have talked to him. I'm sure to some degree, Chris Spielman probably understands a little bit of Flores from like having 2 games against him each of the last 2 years. Like all these little pieces sort of like I feel like they point to Flores for me. Flores or Glenn.
I think it's going to be Aaron Glenn. And you know what? Like everyone has their opinions on no like this guy's going to work for sure. This guy's definitely not going to work. And look, I have guys that I'm confident in, but nothing is in this life is a guarantee, and nothing with this football team. But if hiring a head coach is really freaking hard to do. So you got to just latch on to whatever traits you like the most and hope that's what makes it work.
Matt Zizzleman says, I am inevitable. Love it.
Nailed it. Love it. Thank you, Matt.
Soreless comes in with a super chat. Says, with our head coach GM issues over the years, what are the odds that we could end up overthinking the hires and completely miss the obvious choice? I think right now, the obvious choice is probably McCarthy. Like, just because he has the like resume there, like aside from like, you know, Vrabel not wanting us. Do you see like an obvious, well, from obvious in the sense of like we have a shot at them. Like I feel like Ben Johnson would be obvious if you could get him, or Cohen might be obvious if you could get him.
My answer was going to be, I don't think there is an obvious coach in this cycle. I don't think any of the closest one for me was Vrabel was the closest to obvious. And I don't know even if I would put him in that obvious tier. So I don't think there is one.
Do people look back at the Saleh year and think, oh, wow, Campbell was like the obvious choice? Like, I don't think he was.
That was 2019 when they tried to get Campbell.
I thought Campbell got hired the same year as Saleh.
Oh, you know, no. I'm thinking, well, the Jets didn't interview Dan Campbell. I was thinking Matt Campbell.
Oh, yes.
In 2019. That's where I thought you were going with that.
That would be interesting if they just like totally pivoted and they're like, hey, we could finally get Campbell from the college ranks.
Yeah.
What about
what
about the coach from Notre Dame? Like, any chance the Jets, you know, take a swing at someone from college?
I don't think he would leave there. I think he's a really damn good football coach. I do. I like Freeman. I think he's really good, but I don't think he would leave for the Jets. I'm not saying I'm against it. I think it'd be an interesting idea, but I don't think that's really likely.
Jet Engine says, the last thing the Jets need is a head coach with 3 lawsuits who will add the New York Jets to the complaint in 3 years when he is fired. And Joe Brady, head coach? No. McCown? No. We need a head coach, not a coordinator in chief. So the Flores complaints or lawsuits, I think it's all one lawsuit, but I guess it's technically multiple lawsuits because it's all against, I think it's the Texans, the Giants, maybe the Dolphins. And I don't even know where his like standing is with the Giants, because it was Bill Belichick that texted him by accident saying congratulations. Like, I think that was pretty unfounded.
Yeah, that was a dick move on Bill Belichick's part. He thought he was texting Brian Daboll congratulations, but he was texting Brian Flores, who wasn't made aware yet that he didn't get the job, which is a really, really shitty way to find out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think there's any race issue with that. With Miami, I think he probably has an argument with him being asked to lose and get money for it. I think there's something
tamper
to
with
that.
Brady too.
They tampered with Brady and Sean Payton, both of them.
Yeah.
They lost a first-round pick and I think a fourth-round pick for that. Anytime you hear a Dolphin fan bitch about like, oh, you wasted the number 2 overall pick, you wasted a first-round pick on Zach Wilson. They wasted a first-round pick on a quarterback that never took a snap for him. So,
funny.
Screw him. Fuck the fish. Dante says, I will take McCarthy without Rodgers. I don't need that circus this year. We don't need the New York Packers joke again. So he would take McCarthy without Aaron Rodgers, and then McCarthy, you would think, gets his opportunity to draft his quarterback for the first time.
Okay. I like McCarthy better without Rodgers, I think, for that reason. This year was really bad enough with all the shit that was slung our way from like the national media side of how this team was covered. And if you add Mike McCarthy into the mix with Aaron Rodgers and with Devontae Adams and just with everything that's happened the last 2 years, I don't think that ends well.
Yeah, I really don't want to see it. I don't want to experiment with that at all. If Rodgers says like, "Hey, I'm hanging it up, I'm retiring," the unfortunate thing is he's not going to decide until we get a head coach. Like he's going to push this envelope until, he doesn't have to anymore. It's going to be, on the eve of free agency, and the Jets are going to be like, "Okay, we've got our plan for this, we've got our plan for that," and then he's going to be like, "I decided I want to play, and I'm open to playing wherever," and then he's going to force the Jets to say, "No, we don't want you," or "Yes, we do want you." I don't know. I don't know if there's a situation where the Jets say they want him back and he doesn't want to be here. Like, I feel like the getting up and moving. Didn't he just renovate that whole, house? I mean, maybe he goes to, Tennessee or something. Pissed off enough at the Packers, he goes to the Vikings. Vikings would be interesting.
Vikings would be really interesting. And they would
this fucking timeline is a circle. I don't want him to go to the Vikings for that same reason.
I don't think Tennessee is realistic. That roster stinks. They need a lot of work.
He's got a home in Tennessee though, and you got to think. I mean, I guess
got
you
a
think
home in
he's probably
California.
Yeah, but the South isn't juggernauts. I don't think the Texans are an unstoppable force by any means. I don't know. Go a lot of different routes. A lot of interesting takes in the chat tonight.
They're flowing.
I did not write names down. I do have all the super chats here, so I'll just count them in order when we do our spin wheel stuff. This is what happens when we don't have Green Bean.
He keeps us. Everyone has a role here on this show, and when one of us is out, it feels like we're missing a piece. We're missing our guy. Correct with the chat. Keep the names. I did not think of that until you just mentioned it.
This show is like a snowman. A snowman needs 3 circles. We're missing one of our circles.
Yeah. We are
feels
missing
weird.
Big circle.
Maybe that could be a shirt. I think that would look weird though. We need a totem pole. Can't be a totem pole without our green bean. We miss you, bean. 7 minutes. Is there anything we missed?
I think we hit on.
Did we not talk about Tomlin? I don't know if we did.
Yeah, I don't get why a lot of people like Mike Tomlin, and there's a lot of Jet fans who want him to come here. But then I feel like there's a select few, and specifically someone on the beat who is so against Mike Tomlin and thinks he's like he's a big reason for why Pittsburgh stuck with where they are. I would love Mike Tomlin here with the Jets. I think that team is. You want to talk about teams that have overachieved for where they were supposed to be. I look at the Steelers and their record every year and what the roster looks like, and I think he gets more out of his guys, or the most out of his guys. I look at him as one of the 10 best coaches in the NFL easily.
I would agree. I think he's one of the more stable guys. I feel like he's a culture guy. If you could get a Tomlin, that might be a good route. I don't know if I agree with he always gets the most out of his talent. I think in recent years, his offensive side of the ball has struggled because of the lack of quarterback ability. Kenny Pickett's not a good quarterback. Fields, not good. Russ, middling results. The shell of Big Ben towards the end of his career. So, there is a lot that probably handicapped him. I do think he underachieved in the years he had Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben, and Antonio Brown. I thought they should have won another ring with the roster they had with Ben. And there's something to be said for the last 5 playoff games he's been in have not looked very pretty. I have them pulled up right here. Now, granted, the quarterbacks he went against, if you go by today's standard, very good. At least the last 4. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, and then the 2017 Jags, the 21-0 is kind of
that was the ugly one. That was the real ugly one.
But everything else, I mean, he also didn't show up. He's got 21 points across 5 games. And the 14 points he got against the Ravens this past week was not it felt like the Ravens won it at halftime, and they're like, all right, well, let's just coast and let the clock run out. That's kind of where I felt like on that. I don't know. It feels weird to bitch about Tomlin with how little success we've had. So like, I shouldn't be the one saying, well, I don't want him. We're too good for him. But like, I don't know.
They won 10 games with Russ and Fields this year. They won 10 games with Pickett and what the hell's his face? Mason Rudolph the year before. They won 9 games with Pickett and Mitch Trubisky in 22. Like I'm a Tomlin guy, maybe to a fault, but I think him never having a losing season and just consistency. They're always in the mix. They never fall out of it. To me, the overachieving was more so not on the offensive side of the ball. I think you have fair criticisms of where they are offensively, but it feels like he's dragging that team to the playoffs with the lack of talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball.
That defense is loaded. They might have the best player at all 3 levels of that defense, like in the league. TJ Watt,
they're really good.
Like loaded. Minkah Fitzpatrick, like absolutely lockdown on each level of that. Dante comes in, says, "Come on,
we did have it.
What the heck? It pops up and then goes away. One more try. I gotta hide. There it is. Spill the beans, O'Leary. Who is the Tomlin hater on the Jets beat?
So I like this person, so I don't want to throw them under the bus. He's a good dude, and I normally like what he has to say, but I don't agree with him on this. Nick Faria. Nick Faria is not a Tomlin guy. The last 2 years, when this conversation has been brought up after the Steelers have been eliminated, he points to them being stuck in the middle and them not being able to win, and that they haven't won a playoff game in X amount of time. I get it. He's open. Everyone can have their opinion on it. I don't personally agree with it, and I don't get it, especially from the Jets' perspective, where they desperately need a good head coach. So I don't understand the hate on it.
Dude, the amount of the amount of Steelers fans that absolutely cooked him on Twitter after that game. And it's hard to like judge anyone based on the initial reactions to a loss, because like if you pull up any good head coach and their team loses in the playoffs, shit just goes sideways so fast. But like, man, there was some real mean stuff being said about Tomlin. Like, we're just like 10 wins and then he just falls asleep. Asleep at the wheel. Just nonstop like winning season and then I don't care. Not that he doesn't care, but it feels like the team doesn't care. Jet Engine comes in, says, Matt, all over Tomlin, but we're too good for McCarthy. LOL. Tomlin works for the greatest front office in the league for 50 years with built-in culture.
Well, it goes back to what I said before, Jet Engine. I think that Mike McCarthy is a historic underachiever, and I think Mike Tomlin is an overachiever with his teams. And I think that's the biggest difference. Yeah, their record might be similar. And yeah, you could look at, okay, well, this one hasn't won a playoff game in X amount of time or, whatnot, coming up short. But I think the Packers and the Cowboys have significantly better teams and better rosters, and more was expected out of them. Nothing has been expected out of the Steelers for years, and yet they continue to win games every single year.
I feel like, when did Bell come to us? 2018 or 19?
19.
19. So I feel like the Steelers haven't really been the Steelers since like 2018. Like when they were balling out with Ben still. And Ben was on the back nine of his career. And I do think they've overachieved in the last half a decade. See, Jet Engine, I think you're wrong. And I think Matt is right on this take. I think it's McCarthy underachieves while Tomlin has overachieved. Even though I disagree with like the thought of necessarily, I understand why fans wouldn't want Tomlin. And I can see where they think he's overrated. I think if he were to, like, let's say he sat out a year and like they're just like, hey, we're not going to trade you or anything. We're just going to he's just going to be done for a year. I feel like the Giants would be a really good landing spot for him after Daboll's gone.
Okay. I see that. They We need a culture reset, and he would be a good guy to do that. I think the Jets need a culture reset. I think remember we were ranking like culture fit and offensive. I look, Mike Tomlin to me is much more of a culture guy than Mike McCarthy is.
I agree, 100%. Yeah, full stop. Boys and girls, we have reached the end of our stream. Where's my button? We gotta go to spin wheel. Oh, I gotta hide us.
I'm on there twice.
I know. I got you twice. Bam. It's because I have this set up for my call-in show. Green Bean is like, oh, I can't make it like an hour and a half before the show. And I'm like, I'm not building new overlays. So it is what it is. Hold on. We got a few more. Jet Engine says, Jesus effing Christ. I like Tomlin, you goons. I would take either, but they need an experienced head coach for F's sake.
Fair.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure I just heard Jet Engine say he really hates Mike Tomlin.
He hates Mike. I read that as he hates Mike Tomlin's guts.
That's definitely what I heard.
I'm kidding. Thanks, Jet Engine. Appreciate you.
Ah, Blitzcrew said, what happened to Milk Thumbs?
Oh, Milky.
Milk Thumbs. Milk Thumbs. Thank you, Blitzcrew. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us. Hit that like button if you're still hanging out with us. All right, so I've got... All right, I actually have to count these things. Damn it. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We got 28 people in our competition. So I'm going to say, 298, no, 28. So we're going to say the third time that I hit generate. 1, 2, 3. So it's number 7 on this list.
Lucky
1, 2,
number
3,
7.
4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's going to be Connor Long.
Hey,
Connor. If you're tuning in or hanging out with us, reach out on any of your social media platforms or shoot me an email, jetstalk247@gmail.com or talkinjetshow@gmail.com. Get your information. Our guy that won the 𝐒𝐿𝐾𝐞 jersey last week, I will respond to you in the email. We went back and forth a little bit. I just hadn't placed the order. I was like, hey, just send me which one you want because there's like a zillion knockoff ones. Like whichever one you want, just we'll send it to you. So let's see what Connor gets here.
𝐒𝐿𝐾𝐞.
Connor gets a 𝐒𝐿𝐾𝐞 jersey. All right.
Ooh.
We're cooking. Connor, reach out. Send us a link to whatever 𝐒𝐿𝐾𝐞 jersey you want. Got some fun ones. There's some military ones. They have some like crazy ones that we don't like normally see. Thank you so much for playing.
I might browse just for fun after we log off here.
Right? Matt, any last words for our people out in the chat?
I really hope by this time next week, the Jets have hired a general manager. I hope next week we are talking about who the general manager of the Jets is. But with how this search is going, maybe they will just continue to add names to the list and be like, they have 22 head coaches they have to talk to and now 36 general manager candidates. We'll keep breaking it down.
I want nothing more than to be over this merry-go-round of who is our GM and what's going to happen and look at all these interviews we're doing. For each interview that we ask for is a slap in the face directly to our beloved Green Bean, in my opinion. Boys and girls, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Hit that like button. If you enjoyed our show, we'll be back here next week, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. JETS.
Just go somewhere else. I can't take this nonsense anymore. How are you going to blame the defense?
I got the power. Screw Green Bean. Damn it.
But once you get to the sausage, I feel like we're doing something.
Go Jets.
And that's the other part of it is the people are insanely jealous of this show. This show gets the best of the best, and it does it a different way with positivity.
He scores!
Ow, my head. No, come on.
What would you give up to see a Jets Super Bowl?
All of my friends and family.
Hit those milk thumbs, boys and girls.
Freeze run.
Hold on to your underwear, ladies, and stand by, bitches. It's now time for Talkin' Jets with your hosts, Matt, Ryan, and Green Bean.